Thanks for having me. I'm Bill McKinney. I work for Thrivent. Those of you that don't know us, we're a Fortune 500 located downtown. We sell life insurance annuities and other investment-related products to, used to be for the last 100 years, Lutherans, and now all Christians. So we are the only not-for-profit Fortune 500, and we're also the only overtly faith-based Fortune 500. So we're a very unique animal. But I'm going to talk today not about Thrivent, but about some work that we were doing that we've been involved in at the Itasca Project that we're also helping support. So for those of you that don't know, the Itasca Project is an informal network of leaders in the Twin Cities, both in the business world, in the government sector, and in the not-for-profit sector, working on making the Twin Cities a great place to live and do business and work. They've been active for, I think, a little over 10 years. They've tackled a number of topics. They have three kind of core focus areas. One is jobs, one is education, and one is transportation. And at the intersection of all three, as we heard a little bit earlier today, is disparities hit all three of those. So disparities has really emerged as something that they're specifically targeting as a project. So a couple of years ago, actually several years ago, they launched a task force focused on the disparity issue and how do we as a metro and group of civic leaders come together to move the needle on this. And they worked really hard. They came up with some action items, and the Great Depression of 2008 hit, and we sort of looked up and realized not only did we not get better, but during the recession, we actually got worse on the disparities issue. So fast forward to 2 years ago, we said, okay, we got to take another run at this. It's too important not to leave. And it is really critical to the economic health of this region. So we started by sort of going back to the facts and saying, what is the problem? What do we know today? And you saw all those of you that, you guys all know these facts. There's nothing new in the data. And we tried to say, okay, but what can we do? So clarifying the scope for the people in the room. What the group agreed on was all of us are employers, that's something we can move. Some of us are in education, some of us are in for-profit, some of us are in service providing, but what we all are is employers, and that's a needle we can actually move. The second thing we did was say, okay, well, what would we do? And we spent a fair amount of time going around and talking to companies that have done something significant that have made a difference, or organizations. Similar to our first speaker, unfortunately, we didn't find any regions that had a blueprint for success. We found lots of companies or individual organizations that have made a big difference, but there were no regions that have cracked this nut. And if they have, they don't know how they did it. So we, based on what we learned in the kind of conversations and research, we really came up with a two-part solution. One part is, what can we do as individual companies in our role as employers, and then collectively, what can we do regionally? And what we realized as we got into it was there really were pretty clear analogs across those two things. And the three things that we really focused in on at the company level were, number one is have a clear business case for change. Like, answer the why question. And the answer is not because it's the right thing to do. Unfortunately, in most businesses, the currency is business dollars, the currency is shareholder value, the currency is whatever it is. And when you've got a clear business case, you're going to get people's attention. You get the leader's attention. And the fact is, for all of us, and it's true whether you're a not-for-profit, you're a for-profit, you're a business, the demographic shift that's happening, that's obvious, it's not going away, is the compelling business driver for most of us. And as employers, it's clearly a business driver. So that was the number one. Number two is you better have the top person's attention, and they better be the leader on the cause. So if your CEO is outsourcing the job to the HR department and cheerleading from the sidelines, it's not gonna work. You might get some new programs, you might get a little bit of progress, but you're honestly not gonna get sustained, lasting impact, which is what we want, right? The third is to get after the best practices. And what was interesting when we went around and talked to a bunch of organizations that have been working on this inside their companies was a lot of them started with the practices. We don't have any diversity. We need a recruiting program for African-American women and a leadership training program to get more of them into management roles. And that's where they started. They didn't have a clear business case. The CEO or whoever he or she was didn't say, this is a priority and I mean it, it matters. And so what happened was they made a little bit of progress, created a revolving door, and nothing changed over 5, 10 years. So how do we not repeat that? So that was sort of that led us to the 1, 2, 3, and it's really got to get after all three pieces to solve the problem. And so sort of extending that idea of those three things to the region, we said, well, what do we need to do as a collectively, how might we do this? Well, the first was we needed a business case, which I think we could just steal yours. There's the business case. A lot of your employees are going to be different than the ones you have today, and you need to figure out how to get them, how to make them successful, how to get them into leadership roles, how to make them leaders in this community. They're also your customers, which if you want them to buy your products, they need to have some money, and a job is a really good thing to have if you want some money. So the second piece is, which is where we've really spent most of our energy on, is this C-level commitment. So how do we get the leaders, not just the HR people, not the Penns and me, but the Brad Hewitts and I'm sorry, Mike? No. David. How do we get the Davids and the Brad Hewitts and the Richard Davis and the Inga Tulines and the people that are the big employers, and the state is the biggest one, so how do you get the governor to say this matters? And so we launched a leadership cohort that currently has 35 public-private leaders along with their key lieutenants, whoever they are, that are driving the initiative inside their company. We currently represent about 160,000 jobs, and we've said we're going to move the needle. So how are we doing this? The first is to get that C-suite group together that are the people that are committed. And not everyone's committed, right? I mean, these people. There are CEO leaders at all kinds of organizations that are like, I don't see the problem, I don't want to hear about it, I got enough other stuff to think about. Fine, skip on down, get the ones that care. We're creating a kind of a quarterly forum where we get together. We had one here. We're having actually meeting at Hennepin County in August. And we're trying to create a forum where we can share what's working. So on the best practice side, we can share what's not working. And the format for the meetings is one CEO gets up and says, I have a problem. We try to find somebody, either a service provider or better yet, another CEO, president, ED who has a solution. And then we have some table discussion about, okay, what might work for me? So trying to be very practical about moving the needle. The other two things that we're doing that we feel good about. One is at every meeting, we're asking people to make a commitment. What are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do between now and the next meeting to move the needle? Because I think we all heard loud and clear, and some of you have been those voices that have reminded us, we've been talking about this problem for an awful long time around here, and we're not making any progress. So getting people to make those, tomorrow I will do something different, I will make something different happen in my company is really important. The second one is we are going to track the data. So every company that's part of the leadership cohort has agreed to provide the data. How am I doing? What's my percentage of new hires? What's my percentage of people in leadership? And then we're going to share and we're going to talk about that. And we're going to try to recognize people that are really making real progress. We're going to try to help the people that aren't. And we're going to try to share and make sure we're actually moving the needle. So create some accountability among the people who are in the position to make a difference to move the bar in the Twin Cities. So we feel really good about where we are. The only call to action is if you would like to be involved or you would like to get your CEO or C-level person involved, let us know. We're happy to have more folks in and we can share kind of what the expectations are for joining.